Entry 45, Monday, July 13th, 1964, dealing with the Justice Department.
Yes, this entry reports on the fact that I attended a meeting at the Department of Justice on an important issue with respect to responsibilities in the criminal field within the department. And I spent the morning there, but later in the day, which was a Monday, I began work on dealing with a draft of the foreign conspiracy section of the report. I had received the report on Saturday. I had taken a look at it, and I undertook to revise it, which I describe as a task that took 3 days and resulted in reducing it from a 90-page draft to approximately 65 pages. That was characteristic of much of the editing that I did, was to try to tighten the writing and reduce the number of pages, but be careful to endorse the opinions that were incorporated or conclusion that were set forth in the draft.
That's a pretty good cut down, though. You got a third. You cut a third of the material.
Well, that's right. Now, what I don't know is whether David Slauson and Bill Coleman basically agreed with that or resented the extent to which I had shortened their draft.
Yeah. All right, next entry. Entry number 46, which is dated Tuesday, July 14th, 1964. It's a page-long entry. Tell us what's happening here.
Well, the entry has a very dramatic topic, a sentence of the first paragraph. It says, quote, "On Thursday the 14th, the panic button was pushed for the umpteenth time at the Warren Commission," end quote. The button was pushed because Mr. Rankin, for the very first time, had a personal meeting with someone at the White House regarding release of the commission report. And the result of that discussion was to set a target date of August 10, 1964 for release of the commission's report. Rankin knew while he was in the White House and heard this proposal from Mr. McGeorge Bundy, the National Security Advisor to President Johnson, that it was an objective that really could not be achieved. But he did not feel he was in a position at that time to lay out the reasons why the date was premature, and he recognized that the principal concern in the White House was that release of the report not overlap with the beginning of the Democratic National Commission on August 17, a week later after this proposed date. So Rankin came back to the offices and sat down with Norman and myself, and we proceeded to complain among ourselves about the unrealistically early release date, and then turn to the task of getting the work done as quickly as we could.
And this is the first time, it's worth noting, the first time the White House has put sort of any time constraints or anything like that on the commission.
Yes, that's certainly true, and of course it also reminds the listener that the White House never, to this point, and had not even at this point made any comments with respect to the substance of the report, either by asking what the tentative conclusions the Commission had reached, or proposing conclusions that the White House hoped might be reached by the Commission. They had been very careful about letting the Commission operate independently, and as we have discussed earlier, the Chief Justice was equally persuaded that he and the members of the Commission should have no contact with the White House about their work during the process of preparing the report.
You might explain to the younger viewers why it would have been considered significant to get the report out before the convention, but particularly before the 1964 presidential election.
Right. It was certainly realized by everyone at the Commission and in the public generally. The president was accused by some of being involved in the assassination in an odious fashion, and there were political consequences to that, which he and the Democratic establishment, of course, wanted to dispel by having the report released in advance of the November election date. It was a hard-fought election, although in fact the president won all the states except 6. But as a personal footnote, the president, notwithstanding his convincing win, was so persuaded that crime in the streets was a major public issue, and especially in the District of Columbia, that upon being reelected, he immediately called Nick Katzenbach, who was then the Attorney General, and demanded that a public program against crime be developed by the Justice Department. And he wanted that on his desk in 3 weeks. And Nick Katzenbach called me and a few others from various divisions in the department and reported what the president had insisted be accomplished within 3 weeks. And Nick Katzenbach said he wanted the program on his desk in 2 weeks. And then each of us from the various divisions involved went back to our own organizations and asked for a complete program against crime on our desk within 1 week. So out of that process, a federal program was presented to Congress by the administration with the sponsorship of the Department of Justice. And its basic provisions were to provide for the first time a federal law that would provide monetary grants to instrumentalities at the state level in the law enforcement field, such as police departments, prosecutorial offices, and so forth. But the amount of money involved was very modest, but the principle of federal assistance to state and local law enforcement agencies was relatively new and a matter of some controversy. And at the same time, the president announced the appointment of a national commission on crime, in which I think Nick Katzenbach may have been designated as chairman. And there was going to be a President's Commission on Crime in the District of Columbia. And with respect to that latter commission, when it was appointed in 1965, Jack Miller, who was now in private practice, was designated to be chairman of that commission, and he asked me to be executive director. So all of that is a long footnote, which is in part stimulated by this entry.
Yeah, you're a little glutton for punishment there. 2 presidential commissions, sort of back to back.
Yes, I do say in the book that no one in their right mind does this because the intensity and the difficulty of bringing in a lot of talented people together in a short period of time, emphasizing their common need to get something done, brings to it a tension that's not, everyday occurrence in the practice of law or other fields as well.
This second paragraph sort of touches on different assignments going out. Do you want to sort of talk us through who was doing what at this point?
Well, at this point, although I had some interest in the matter earlier, it was decided that Al Goldberg, the historian, would undertake the appendix on rumors and suspicions. I thought that was an extremely important appendix because it was an effort to collect all the various allegations and adverse commentary that had been generated during the preceding 8 months, organize it in some systematic way, and in each case try to reference the portion of the report that addresses that particular concern. So Al Goldberg had done splendid work in a variety of ways and had an interest in this particular project that I thought he should take responsibility for it and provide us all with a draft, which obviously we could, work on with him. And I think the end product was a good one.
We'll pick this up in the next entry.